the guy who used to do the KGO production, did a special open and close for your Mark Murder Monday. So here
is
Murder One.
Red rum, red rum, red rum.
Mark's Murder Monday.
Yeah, how about that? Here she is, Courtney, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, Courtney.
Hey.
Wow.
Hello.
Yeah, with your own little open there. Pretty cool.
Okay.
Can you not hear?
Yeah, sort of hear myself.
Can you hear yourself? Not enough? Now do you hear yourself better?
Yeah, now I hear myself. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
We're just working it all out. I will also mention Courtney has a...
Oh, no.
Courtney has a superhero figure that we keep here.
So
I move
cute.
it forward. Yeah, during her segments, I move it forward.
Oh, goodness.
Anyway, Courtney, you have as usual, a true crime story. That this is really bizarre because of the. Well, why don't you give us the details? I think there are a lot of bizarre qualities to this story.
Yes, and I had been working on this story since the middle of last week, and it goes without saying, obviously, that what happened yesterday in Colorado is awful and an egregious, horrible situation, and so it did happen, but I was so far down the road with this story that I'm going to move forward with this story.
Well, of course, I mean that almost falls into a breaking news type situation, but you're right.
Exactly.
It's an odd place to be because we call the segment Mark Murder Monday, but it really means these are mysteries, sort of murder mysteries, as opposed to the horror that we talked about it in the first half hour. So it's cool that you acknowledge it, but we understand that
Good.
Okay, so
yeah. Well, some of the sources that I used for this story were New York Times, NBC, CBS, GMA. Everybody's running it. It is the University of Idaho Murders. And East Idaho News and some of the local news have been actually doing great reporting. And the families have granted interviews to a lot of the local news, which I think is important. And so they've been a great source of information. Also, the Daily Mail, which probably undermines everything that I'm going to talk about. But so this is the University of Idaho Murders. On November 13th at 11:59 a.m., police responded to a 911 call at a home just off the campus of the University of Idaho in Moscow, Idaho. This is a small town in the northern part of Idaho near the Washington border. The population is about 25,000.
John is showing some of the interior of the house right now where this all happened.
Thank you. So the 911 call reported someone unconscious. And what's strange about that is this was a gruesome crime. A lot of the first responders, including the coroner who was called to the scene just after noon on November 13th, said that this was the most gruesome crime they'd ever seen. So the call comes in. It's reported that someone is unconscious at a home. And this was only confirmed yesterday in a news conference that the call was made from one of two roommates who were in the home but remained physically unharmed in the attack. And so their phone was used to call 911.
So how many people were in the home? If there's a...
Yeah. So there were 4 people who were killed. And then there were 2 roommates who lived in the home but remained physically unharmed. So there
we're seeing pictures of the kids who lost their lives and all of this right now. Anyway, go ahead.
Exactly. So when police arrived, they found 4 victims of homicide. All were stabbed, and authorities believe that the weapon was a Rambo-style knife. And it was probably the same knife that the person used to kill all 4 of the victims.
What's a Rambo-style knife? Is that like a big Bowie type knife, like a big?
Yeah, I was listening to this man talk about these knives, and they were basically used by the military in World War II, and they were fashioned the Rambo style off of John Rambo from the movies. I think it sort of became more notoriously known. But as I mentioned, the coroner and other emergency responders said this was one of, if not the most gruesome crime scene they had ever seen. There was blood all over the walls, and there was so much blood that it was seeping actually outside of the exterior of the home from one of the rooms.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So the victims were Kaylee Goncalves. She's 21, a senior, and she was a woman from Rathdrum, Idaho. She was a general studies major who was known as really a go-getter and very ambitious. She had already lined up a tech job in Austin, Texas, and was looking to move there at the beginning of summer. She was a sorority member and was best friends with Madison Mongan, who is one of the other victims. They had known each other from what I believe was like sixth grade, something like 10 or 12 years old. Madison Mogan, she was 21. She's a senior, a woman from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. She was a marketing major who was just known to be incredibly kind. She was also a sorority member of Pi Beta Phi, but there were 3 women who lived in the home. There were 5 women total, but 3 of them all were part of the Pi Beta Phi sorority. As I mentioned, Madison and Kaylee were very close. In fact, when Kaylee's sisters were talking about losing Kaylee, they included Madison as one of their sisters, as one of their siblings who had been killed because she was just considered such a part of Madison's family. And they lived in the house. Madison and Kaylee lived in the house where the murders happened with their good friend, Xana Kernodle. And so, as I mentioned, Xana lived in the house. She was a sorority member of Pi Beta Phi. She was 20 years old. She was a junior woman from Post Falls, Idaho. She was also a marketing major, same as Madison. And she was very strong-willed and really enjoyed the independence of college life, was what her dad mentioned in a interview from last week. Her father was actually the one to take to the press that Xana was, I think, the only victim who fought. So there were bruises and indications of the knife cutting parts of her skin in the way that defensive wounds would be incurred. And so he also mentioned that in an interview from last week.
It's interesting because in the chat, people are saying, how come you can have all of these people lose their lives and no one puts up a struggle? You're saying one, at least in one case, there's evidence of a struggle.
So it was believed that they were all sleeping.
I see.
But what's
But still,
interesting is,
once you kill one, you think
you would think other people would hear it.
Yeah.
And then there were 2 women who didn't hear anything. And the 2 women who didn't hear anything were on a different floor. And then I'll just quickly talk about Ethan. Just not quickly, but I'll touch on Ethan Chapin because he was 20 years old. He was a freshman male from Conway, Washington. He was a recreation, sport, and tourism management major and loved sports. He played every sport that he could. He, both his brother and sister said he was their number one, and he was actually a triplet. So he was the firstborn of these 3 siblings. He was a member of Sigma Chi fraternity, which is actually important because that's where he was the night before that he was killed. He also lived at the Sigma Chi fraternity house, and he was a member of the fraternity with his brother Hunter. So the home was at 1122 Kings Road in Moscow, Idaho. It was 6 beds, 3 baths, a 2,300 square foot home. There were 3 floors, so the victims were on the 2nd and 3rd floor, and there were 2 victims on each floor. From what I understand, and this is not corroborated by the police, Ethan and Xana were on the 2nd floor, and Madison and Kaylee were on the 3rd floor. And they think that the perpetrator came in through the 2nd floor through a sliding glass door.
So the perpetrator killed people on the 2nd floor and then moved to the 3rd floor and killed a bunch of people. And it's a really remarkable thing. This is a sorority house, so I guess people have their own room or they're roommates, right?
Well, it's on fraternity and sorority row, but it's not an actual house.
Okay.
It's actually across the street from Sigma Chi, which is where 2 of the victims were that night.
Okay.
Yeah. But I bring up the sorority
2 of
and
the victims
fraternity.
were there prior to going to the house.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. But I bring that up because that's where a lot of these connections were happening between the victims. So on the night of November 12th, the morning of November 13th, Kaylee and Madison went out to the Corner Club from 10 p.m. to 1:30 a.m., which is on Main Street in downtown Moscow. After the Corner Club, the women walked to a grub truck where they ordered food. What's interesting about the truck is the truck live streams these late nights on Twitch. And it was actually Olivia, Kaylee's sister, who found the footage and was able to identify Kaylee and Madison as being there ordering from the truck, and they were with a mystery man.
If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the pictures of them by the food truck. These are the last pictures of them alive.
Is he
By the way,
hugging
Courtney,
her, the mystery man?
you're listening to the show, I think, at the same time you're talking. Is that on your phone, the show? No? I'm hearing an echo. I'm just wondering where it's coming from. Maybe it's your laptop. Is that possible? Can you just... I'm going, where is that echo coming from? Okay. So that's better. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, go ahead.
And so I've heard two different reports. I've heard Kaylee's sister, Olivia, who also found the grub truck video, that she actually found the Uber driver that drove Madison and Kaylee home from the grub truck. I've also heard it was a private citizen, so I don't know if they're calling in the Uber driver a private citizen. And Kaylee then proceeds to call her ex-boyfriend, Jack Decor, 6 times from 2:26 to 2:44, and then Madison calls Jack 3 times from 2:44 to 2:52. Jack
they're calling this guy Jack.
Yeah, they're calling
over and
him
over
and over again.
So they must have known. Maybe that was because there was something going down. They were trying to get a hold of Jack. Get over here, help us, or not?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it was just.
Or he's a suspect. You're saying.
Well,
do we know who Jack is?
Yeah, we know who Jack is, and the family doesn't think that Jack is involved.
Okay.
It's really sad, actually. I just went to their Instagram pages last night, and there's a lot of people blaming Jack on Kaylee's Instagram, and the police don't think it's Jack, and the families don't think it's Jack. I think it was just late night. They wanted to reconnect with an ex-boyfriend.
7 calls. Wow. Oh,
10 calls. Yeah.
Yeah, but at
Or
that
9
age,
calls.
you call over and over. Yeah, that's true.
Well, and there's alcohol involved.
Yeah.
That's true. I'd be willing to bet my lunch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ethan and Xana.
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol.
I said it already. You don't need to run it. Okay, go ahead.
Ethan and Xana, they had been dating since spring. They were the other 2 victims in this horrific story. They went to a Sigma Chi party from 8 p.m. to 2 p.m. 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. that evening. It was across the street, or like 100 yards from the home, so it was very close. They returned at 1:45 a.m. on November 13th, so they went out on the 12th. But nobody's really talking about what happened from 9 p.m. to nearly 2 a.m., which is strange. Xana's father did say that he spoke to Xana at midnight on November 13th. She died.
When did they think? Yeah, she died at what time?
She died 3 hours later.
Okay. So take us to the theories, and if you would please, I'm sure we got to wrap up. But so at the end of all of this, how many people are dead again?
There's 4 victims, and there's 2 roommates that lived in the home that remained unharmed. So they didn't
even sustain injuries.
Yes.
Okay.
And then there's been about over 600 tips, 90 interviews. There's 120 people assigned to this case, including the FBI. And that's they really don't have. Apparently, the crime scenes were very chaotic, and there was a lot of stuff left as it relates to DNA and other things. So hopefully they find this person, but they don't have any suspects right now.
There's no sexual assault involved. It was just brutal murder. God.
Yeah. I know, it's awful.
And the 911 call came in from who? They're asking.
So the 911 call came in from one of the roommates who lived there that was unharmed. Their names were Dylan and Bethany.
And the 911 call is someone's unconscious, or this is what's...
it was someone unconscious, but it wasn't them. It was someone using their phone. They won't say who it was. The police won't say who it was.
Now, Courtney, one of the photos we have is the screenshot of this mystery man who kind of motions up towards them and follows them as they leave. Do we know anything about that guy?
I don't know his name. There are much better sleuths than me on Reddit, and
well, what are the cops
Twitch?
Saying about this? Or
but
I
think there are some theories, but basically the idea is that he followed the women from the club to the food truck and then left and went in a different direction, and like they don't really know who he is. They don't know if he.
But it did look like he was looking at them earlier. He was like standing there, and now the image on the screen is when he motions up, and then moments later he follows them off to the left.
I think it's weird that he arrives at the food truck with the women. They don't talk to him at all. He bumps into her. She doesn't even really like look up or acknowledge that they've kind of run into each other as she's walking up. It was a weird interaction. And then they just left. They didn't say goodbye. They almost ran away like they were avoiding him. So the whole thing is strange.
What do you call those people that they're men that are angry that no women will date them?
Incels?
Something.
Incels, yeah.
Incels,
I wonder if it was because they're really cute girls. So I wonder if it was that type of situation where he was just mad at women in general, especially, beautiful women. And so.
Well, he could have been at that party and then obsessed about them all night.
Yeah.
And he's definitely crazy and mad, right? I mean, angry.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't perpetrate a crime like that where there's blood everywhere and you're hacking people up unless you're really angry.
Yeah.
So he's totally disconnected. What an awful case. And there they are. Yeah, you can see them on screen now. And so there are no breaks in this case. There are no suspects. There's
no.
This is in Moscow, Idaho.
Moscow, Idaho.
You know how Moscow, Idaho got its name? Anybody know how Moscow, Idaho? Why they call it Moscow, Idaho? Courtney, you know.
I know.
Why?
There are two theories, but the one that seems most corroborated
everything's a theory with Courtney. Okay, go ahead.
Is that
guess that when you're a crime specialist, there are only theories. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. At the time when they were incorporating the town, the postmaster general, his name was Samuel Neff, he had been born in Moscow, Pennsylvania, and he had lived in Moscow, Iowa, so he named it Moscow. And so I guess if it's not broke, but that was one of the theories that I read about.
Wow, there you go. Well, a very nice job. I thank you for joining us every Monday.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And
Mark's Murder Monday.
Your own little
I know.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, very, very cool.
It's very exciting.
Courtney, everybody, thank you.
Bye, Courtney.
Yeah,
Bye.
there you go.
Thank you.
Very well done. Wow.